What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTB Ravens Media, bringing you Ravens content every single day. If you want to stay updated with Ravens content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell as well if you want to get notified every single time I upload a brand new video. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be talking not as much about current Baltimore Ravens stuff, but current NFL news associated with Baltimore Ravens players and Baltimore Ravens legends, in that the NFL Hall of Fame finalists have been announced, and two players that were somewhat known for at least playing for the Baltimore Ravens, or at least Ravens fans remember them playing for the Ravens, were first year eligible, and both of them being wide receivers. In Anquan Boldin, helped the Ravens get their Super Bowl win, and Steve Smith Sr., who helped the Ravens at least try and become contenders after the Super Bowl win and after the kind of decay of Joe Flacco's performances. But we always love Steve Smith in Baltimore. And both of them were first-year eligibles. Both of them were nominated. However, neither of them ended up making the finalists list. And the finalists isn't all the people that will make it. Eventually, those will be announced. And hopefully some of the guys, there's some great names on here. And I'm going to go through the list of the players that did make it, just so that you guys know. And there are some Baltimore Ravens players on this list, so it is good to announce that they are finalists. But it does suck that, and I'll talk more about Anquan Boldin and Steve Smith and my thoughts of them and whether or not they should be in the Hall of Fame. So let me know what you guys think about those players. Should they be in the Hall of Fame? Are they Hall of Fame worthy? Let me know, because I think they're both. I mean, obviously they're borderline players. They could very well be in the Hall of Fame and maybe should have been in the Hall of Fame this year. But Jared Allen, defensive end. Hopefully you guys know who Jared Allen is. Absolute legend. Ravens legend Willie Anderson played for the Ravens for 1 year after playing his career with the Bengals. Rondé Barber, Tony Boselli, Leroy Butler. Ravens legend Devin Hester, obviously played for the Ravens in 2016. Andre Johnson, Torrey Holt, Sam Mills, Richard Seymour, Zach Thomas, DeMarcus Ware, Reggie Wayne, Patrick Willis, and Bryant Young. Those are all of the finalists. And, there's 26 finalists. And out of that, there were 122 total players. And then there's also players that are non-players. So there's senior finalists and things like that. But that'll be all announced February 10th is when we'll find out about the Hall of Fame and things like that. But, quickly I want to talk about the one major, I don't know, he's not really a major Ravens player that made it, but Devin Hester. Devin Hester, I fully believe that Devin Hester should be in the Hall of Fame. I believe he's the greatest return man of all time, and I believe that warrants getting into the Hall of Fame. And I know some people don't think that Devin Hester should be a Hall of Famer, and I think that is crazy because he is the best to ever do it. When it comes to returning punts and when it comes to returning kickoffs, there was nobody better than Devin Hester. He had 7 return touchdowns in his rookie year. 7. Unbelievable how electric this man was. And I fully support him being in the Hall of Fame. And I loved when he came to the Ravens, very late in his career. It sucks that it wasn't prime Devin Hester, but Ravens got some good returns out of him. And, shout out to Devin Hester. I do believe he should be in the Hall of Fame. Let me know if you guys think Devin Hester, if he deserves to be in it, because obviously he's technically a wide receiver, but he's a kick return specialist, punt return specialist. But now on to the Ravens wide receivers. Anquan Boldin and Steve Smith. And also there was another guy that didn't make it, not first year eligible, Derek Mason. But I'm going to talk about Anquan Boldin first. Anquan Boldin was one of the greatest young receivers in NFL history. The way that he came into the league was unbelievable when he came in for the Arizona Cardinals. He dominated from the jump. Similar to how Jamar Chase came out of the gate this year, similar to how Randy Moss came out, similar to how Odell Beckham Jr. came out. Just absolutely crazy. Similar to Justin Jefferson, another guy that had a great rookie year. That was Anquan Boldin. And Anquan Boldin followed that up with consistent, really good play. And eventually he gets to the Baltimore Ravens. And it wasn't like he was some veteran wide receiver that didn't do a whole lot for the team. No, he was the guy. He was the guy for the season, and he was especially the guy for that playoff run. When Joe Flacco needed a play, every time he turned to Anquan Boldin, except for one particularly play where he decided to trust Jacoby Jones. But we'll we'll let that one slide. That one worked out pretty well. But Anquan Boldin absolutely dominated in the playoffs. And just watch the Colts game as highlights, or the New England Patriots game in the playoffs. Just watch those games, and you will realize how important he was to that Super Bowl. I mean, if Joe Flacco hadn't been as unbelievable as he was, Anquan Boldin was arguably just as important to that postseason run as Joe Flacco. And that's saying a lot, because Joe Flacco had arguably the greatest and most impressive postseason run a quarterback has ever had. And Anquan Boldin combining fantastic top-tier play. You know, at some points, he was one of the best receivers in the NFL, along with a long career, along with a clutch career in the postseason and a winning career. I truly do believe that he should be in the Hall of Fame. I really do. I think a lot of Ravens fans will agree with me on that. I think he should get in because he has all three. Some players are just winners that had big moments. Some players are guys that didn't really win a whole lot, but they were very dominant. They were top tier players, guys like Dan Marino, but he never won a Super Bowl or things like that. But then there's guys that do it all. Anquan Boldin did it all in his career. So, you know, I do think he should make it in. The other guy, Steve Smith Sr. Obviously, Steve Smith Sr., I think, is mostly remembered for being a Carolina Panther. However, he did have a couple of really solid seasons for the Baltimore Ravens, and so I think it is very worth it to bring him up. But Steve Smith Sr., not only was he a great wide receiver, he was one of the best receivers in the NFL, but he was also a historic trash talker and personality. And I think that plays a factor. I think when you're looking at, I used to always listen to a lot of interviews and podcasts and radio shows of people talking with people in the Hall of Fame committee and the people that vote on who makes the Hall of Fame. And the things that always stuck out to me, and this would come up when people are doing debates about Eli Manning and when people are doing debates about other players that are borderline to get in. And they say the bottom line, you know, I don't really care what your stats are. I don't really care how many Super Bowls you won. The biggest thing that stood out to me was they said, if you are talking about the history of football, you know, you're talking about history, you're talking about football, do you have to bring them up? And obviously this isn't something where it's like, oh, you're talking about it for 20 minutes. No, if you were writing a book on the history of football, would they get brought up? And so obviously you look at it and it's like guys like Brady have to get brought up. And, you know, the greatest of the greats are obviously going to be brought up. But there's other players that are going to get brought up. Guys like Lynn Swann was never an amazing wide receiver, but he had amazing performances in the Super Bowl. Dominated in the postseason. You know, potentially guys like Julian Edelman who are on the bubble. Guys like Eli Manning, where it's like, yeah, Eli Manning was never that great. But can you talk about the history of football without bringing up Eli Manning upsetting the 2007 Patriots, upsetting them again a few years later? I think you got to bring him up. And so when you look at Steve Smith, right, I do think that you have to bring up Steve Smith. Not in the idea that, oh, wow, he made significant contributions to the wide receiver position. I don't think the wide receiver position has changed because of Steve Smith Sr. He's not a Randy Moss. He's not a Jerry Rice or somebody like that. He's not a Calvin Johnson. But what was Steve Smith great at? Trash talk. Okay, he's one of the greatest trash talkers the NFL has ever seen. And I think he helped develop that. You know, he was a great trash talker. Chad Ochocinco was a great trash talker. You know, and they were not just great trash talkers, but they were funny when they were doing it. It wasn't like they were just annoying. I mean, they could be annoying. You could find them annoying. But I really think that era of the wide receivers with Ochocinco and Terrell Owens and Steve Smith Sr. being the trash talker, flashy players, really, I think, helped the NFL advance into becoming a more pass-happy, pass-friendly. More people wanted to be wide receivers because they saw him talking on TV. And I think Steve Smith was a part of that. So I do think Steve Smith should make it to the Hall of Fame eventually, or Steve Smith Sr., sorry. I do think he should because I think his impact did help in the entertainment of the sport. I felt like he really contributed to bringing more flair to the wide receiver position. And that, I think, helped with getting better wide receivers, which helped getting more pass game, which helps to getting the offenses that we see today, where now all of a sudden it's all passing, right? We don't see very many franchise running backs like we did in the early 2000s. There's no Michael Turners and Sean Alexanders and LaDainian Tomlinsons. We got some great running backs, but it's running back by committee, right? Even like the Alvin Kamara's running back by committee. The only guys are McCaffrey and Derrick Henry are really the only guys that aren't running back by committee. Arguably Dalvin Cook, but I mean, it's running back by committee now because the wide receiver position has changed and more people are being wide receivers because guys like Steve Smith made that enjoyable. But let me know what you guys think. I think Steve Smith's more on the bubble for me than Anquan Boldin was, but let me know what you guys think. Were they snubbed? Should they have been first year finalists? But then also shout out to all the guys that did get named to the first team finalists, especially Devin Hester. I really do believe that he should make it as a first team player. But thank you everybody for watching. Subscribe for daily Ravens content, and I will see all of you again tomorrow.